All right, we're good.
Perfect, thank you. And so welcome everyone again. My name is Dr. Lily Klug. I am the president of Women in Science Portland, and I'm also a cancer researcher at the Knight Cancer Institute. I'll be moderating this session along with Danny. And I first want to emphasize that we have a strictly enforced code of conduct. And so please see the link there to read it in its entirety, but we do not tolerate harassment or hate of any kind. So please take that elsewhere. Can you go back one slide, Danny? And so the title of this evening's discussion is Why Support Those That Identify as Women in STEM Fields? And I think if you're here, you probably know the answer to that question, that there is a lack of equality, especially in STEM, for women. But more importantly, we want to engage in this community discussion about how we can do better, especially collaboratively, to support and especially empower those that identify as women in STEM fields. And so the phenomenon we'll be discussing tonight is often referred to as the leaky pipeline or pathway, in which many young girls enter the science world with an interest and an aptitude in STEM, but as time goes on, they abandon STEM. And this ultimately results in fewer women in the STEM workforce, and especially in leadership positions. And women of color and other marginalized groups are especially underrepresented. And so we're joined here tonight. We have 9 amazing nonprofits that have come together that are all local, whose missions include empowering women, girls, and femmes in STEM. And as we go through tonight's discussion, a little bit later, they'll each introduce themselves. We have a loose structure for the evening based on some broad questions we have for our panelists. First, we'll kind of start by discussing the particular challenges that face girls and women from marginalized communities. And we'll continue to speak about this as we move into discussing strategies for empowering girls and young women early in the pipeline. We will progress down the pipeline and then discuss strategies for supporting women within their careers and retaining women within their careers and in pursuing leadership positions. So if you have any questions that pertain to any of those things, please use the question and answer function to ask those, and we can give those to the panel. Finally, we kind of want to bring all of this together to talk about how we can collaborate more effectively and synergize our efforts to better support and empower all femmes throughout the STEM pipeline. And as Danny said, we really welcome community and audience participation. This is a community discussion. You're all part of the community. So please share within the chat window if you can. And we want to hear from you. And you can also engage with other people in the audience. And with that, we can start with the panel introductions. I will start. So Women in Science Portland is an all-volunteer run nonprofit that aims to build a community of supportive networks for the development, retention, and promotion of women in the sciences. And so we have a broad definition of science that includes all STEM fields. And honestly, every human, I think, is a scientist. So I'm gonna say that it includes everyone. And we also have a very inclusive definition of women, and that includes anyone that identifies as a woman or non-binary of all backgrounds, and that includes women of color. And so next we can go to Danny. Yep.
Hi, everybody. My name's Danny Gam. I'm the National Marketing Manager at ChickTech. We're headquartered here in Portland, started here in Portland about 9 years ago. ChickTech takes a two-pronged approach with making sure that the technology field is welcoming and inclusive and diverse for everybody. We work with youth in the high school age to get them interested in technology and make sure that they have access to mentors that look like them and who can really help guide them through the beginning stages of discovering what you want to do in life. We also focus on retaining adults in the STEM industry who identify as women, non-binary, transgender. And we do that through conferences, through an online membership community, which this is hosted through tonight. And we also work with companies to make sure that they're a partner and a part in creating a better community for all. And I will be alongside Lily moderating today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Karina Quintanilla. I'm here on behalf of Adelante Mujeres. We are a nonprofit organization in serving Washington County based in Forest Grove. I'm here specifically to talk about the Chicas program. I've been coordinating that program for a couple of years now, and it is a program that empowers young Latinas to lead, to reach their full potential, and to be successful. So we are not an academic program. We are focused more on social emotional development, leadership development, developing cultural identity, pride for cultural identity. But through this, we do provide a lot of opportunities. And one of those is STEM. STEM is a huge initiative for us, and we're actually expanding it. We have children who come in 3rd or 4th grade. They join maybe our STEM camps. We do a STEM camp every summer. They show some interest, and then we see them throughout the program because this program serves 3rd through 12th graders. By the end of senior year, we have so many students, actually the majority of them, pursuing STEM careers. So it's really wonderful to see, and I'm excited to be able to talk to you a little bit more about it later on. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Kellyanne Richardson. I'm here as a co-founder for Camp ELSO, Experience Life Sciences Outdoors. What we do is frame STEAM and nature-based education through a lens that centers and elevates the stories, ways of knowing, and individual needs and lived experiences of Black and Brown communities. We have programming that spans youth, like grade K through 8, teen youth, age 14 through 18, young adults, 19 to 25. Our women, specifically when we work with women or femmes, those are the programs that are the internships, that are paid internships that happen through cohorts, like say for 6 or 8 weeks or for 12 months, just different groups. And we do the internships. And at the end of it, the last one that I went to, the final presentation, I want to say that the kids blew me away, you know, because essentially they're making the world that they want to live in. And I got the feeling that they just developed their projects, worked together. They said they felt more empowered, and they said, show us your resources and get out of the way. We are ready to work. And so we love to build that sort of confidence and competency with our programs, K through 25.
Awesome. Thank you, Kellyanne. Next, we have Elizabeth.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a program coordinator for Centro Cultural. I also work for MESA as the MESA regional coordinator for Washington County. So at Centro, I work in the education department doing logistics and partnerships. So I'm the person that contacts people such as WIS to come on and put presentations on for our students. And we serve students K through 12. For MESA, I implement or I contact schools in the Washington County area to implement the program, and MESA stands for Math, Engineering, and Science Achievement. We're currently in 8 schools in Washington County, and we're hoping to get 11 by the end of January. And thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth. And next up, we have Jessica.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jessica. I work at Latino Network. We have services around the Multnomah County, Washington County, Clackamas County, and And I think that's it at the moment. I feel like all the time we are adding new counties and expanding. But tonight I'm representing the program that is called Estudio Latino, where we empower kids from K to college. Right now we are serving 8 schools as well through the partnership with the Sun Schools and the SOAR program at Latino Network. And well, we have, I'm sorry, we have 5 schools in Portland, in the Portland area, and we have 3 schools in the East County. And yes, our mission in Estudio Latino is to empower kids and most likely girls to, you know, have their emphasis and concentration in the arts. And I'm sorry, you got me when I was distracted. So thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Jessica. Next, we have David.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I run an organization that is responsible for implementing FIRST Robotics. And we do that across the entire state. FIRST is a program that goes all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade as well. And it's designed to prepare kids for the future. And it certainly does teach some technical skills, but a lot of what happens is that social and emotional learning that Karina was talking about, because it's all team-based. So just like a lot of the team-based sports we see, it has really great outcomes for the students that participate. And then just this year, I've gotten some really great impact data back from our evaluation studies, both nationally and here in Oregon. And one of the things that was really exciting was to see that impact is even greater for the young women and femmes that participate in the program. So they tend to be more likely to go into STEM degrees in colleges and be interested in STEM careers. So that was exciting to see. And we love partnering with organizations, partner with a lot of the organizations here to get teams up and running and have them in communities across the state. So happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. Thank you, David. And next, we have Jackie.
Hello, my name is Dr. Jackie Wurz. I use she, her pronouns. I am the executive director at Saturday Academy. Saturday Academy is a nonprofit that engages young people in hands-on, in-depth learning by connecting them to community experts as educators and mentors. Our vision is that students that are engaged in STEAM experiences will increase their knowledge and confidence in life. Our hope is that our learners will be changed thinkers, empowered thinkers, and responsible contributors to a diverse, equitable, and just society. One way that I love to talk about our impact is how our organizations are connected. We had one student who took our Lego Robotics class, thought it was the coolest thing ever, joined an Art or Top Lego Robotics League, came back to Saturday Academy as a summer intern, and then during the course of her summer intern, found WIS PDX as an external support mechanism for her as she explored careers in engineering. So together, we in this community here in Portland can make a huge difference by providing many different points of support for girls, women, and femme in STEM to reach success and new levels of confidence and achievement.
Thanks so much, Jackie. And then next we have Sarah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Foster, and I am the founder of STEM Like a Girl here in Portland. And our mission is to excite and empower girls with knowledge and confidence in STEM to become future problem solvers and leaders. So we work specifically with elementary school girls, mainly in 3rd through 5th grade. And one thing that's a little different about our program is we aim to engage the entire family. So all of our events are parent-daughter or other adult caregiver, where the parents are working directly with their girls in our hands-on activities. We found that especially at this young age, so much of what the girls are interested in and doing is, led by their parents. And so many parents don't have the background or the confidence to do these STEM activities with their daughters. So not only are we trying to excite the girls through our programming, but we're also trying to build confidence in their parents, especially for those not trained in a STEM field, so that they can go on and do these types of activities and they can see the excitement in their daughters' faces and in their own faces. You know, I've had plenty of moms come up to me afterwards or beforehand and say, I'm afraid I don't know how to do this stuff, but my daughter loves it. And by the end of our workshops, you know, they're jumping right in there and doing things. I've been sent pictures from families where they come home and they raid their craft baskets and have rigged up, you know, this zip line from the chandelier in the kitchen down to, you know, someplace else. And so we want to build the confidence and excitement for the whole family.
That's great. Thank you, Sarah. So we're not going to answer your questions next, but we do encourage you to put your questions in the Q&A box. At the end of our panel questions, we'll be answering as many of them as possible, and we'll also open up the floor if you would like to unmute your mic. For now, however, we're going to jump into some questions that we have for all of our panelists. Take it away, Lily.
Yeah, are we going to unshare our screen or? Okay, there, great. Yeah, so thank you everyone, all of you on the panel for being here. I think we already highlighted so many places where there's synergy possible between our orgs and some that already exist. So that's so exciting. I really wanted to start here sort of with a personal question. So with the exception of David, sorry, David. Well, the question's for you too. So I wanted to ask if any of you have been personally discriminated against or experienced discrimination based on your gender. And then also, yep, show of hands would be great. Yep. And how do you bring that into your work? And so I just wanted to open it up if anyone wanted to answer that question. Anyone wanted to start? Jackie, you had your hand up like immediately. Did you want?
I'm the Hermione Granger of the group. I nearly broke my arm socket to get my hand in the air. I have been told that I'm good at math for a girl since I started doing math, all the way through college and graduate school. It was relentless. And what I found was that I could be argumentative, I could try to do all these things, but very often it wasn't changing too many minds. If I wasn't having a lot of really reflective, demonstrative examples of how my skills can translate well in the language of the person that I was speaking to. So one thing that I always do is I try and always look at the perspective of the person that's making that judgment, seeing where they're coming from, and try and use language that's going to resonate with them and what impacts with them to make them understand that all girls and women are powerful thinkers and can engage in intellectual exercises at the level as anybody else. So it just takes a lot of continual advocacy, and that is something that I never let down and always keep in the forefront of my mind. And I am there to advocate for others if they do not feel able to do so in the moment.
That is excellent. Thank you so much. Did anyone else want to say anything to that?
Sure. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, the thing about being a Black woman is you can't just turn off a hat and just be a woman, and then one day you're just Black. Right? I felt like every pillar of myself was always in conflict at every level of my education. You know, where as a Black woman, you know, I'm expected to be the matriarch of my family. So I felt personal guilt by using my fertile years working in the lab 6 days a week for graduate school. Right. And when I took my lab coat off, I thought there was a certain body image I might like to have. So I had to make time to do that. And then I felt bad about not cooking and ordering out. Oh, I'm supposed to be a wife. Maybe I should be cooking instead of ordering out all the time. You know, so it was just all of this internal muck. And, you know, and then it also showed up at work as well along the way. There were times where when I was in school, I had an advisor that really, really science can be a bit self-deprecating, right? Like there's this you start as an underling and it's just slow, go, go, go. But as a matriarch, I was not going to complain, as a person that's a first generation college student or the child of a teen mom. I had a great work ethic and motivation such that I wasn't going to complain. And so, the advisor said, well, you never said uncle. I said, my people were slaves. Why would I complain about grad school? I chose to be here. So all along the way, or in 8th grade, when the teacher thought that I let my friend cheat off of me and she got the A and I got the B. You can guess which one was Black, right? And then, it's just on and on and on. In college, in thermodynamics, I took a test and I was accused of cheating because I got the second highest score in the class. Well, how do you cheat for showing your work on a thermodynamics test? So I, it's just been one ideal versus another. Am I upset because I'm a woman? Am I upset because I'm Black? Am I upset because I'm trying to do the momming while working? And it's just been kind of a battle every step of the way. But luckily, I love what I do. And so the best I can do is bring that joy and excitement so that the other girls will know, like, it's okay, just keep on going, honey. You're not the first, you won't be the last. But keep working hard, and just kind of continue to mentor and empower the parents so that they can advocate for their kids along the way.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Richardson. Okay, and so now I kind of want to get into the meat of this a little bit. We're here to talk about like some of the challenges that we've seen in our experiences and that we know about that we can kind of try to work on fixing. So the question I wanted to start with and put to the panel was kind of broadly, I'd like to focus on first talking about the challenges for marginalized communities in engaging in STEM particularly. And this could be throughout any point in their career, whether it's in early education, undergraduate education, or graduate school, or their career beyond. And I'd like to put that out to the panel. And would anyone like to take on that question first?
I can go. I feel like I had a very relevant conversation this week that ties perfectly into this. So as I mentioned before, we work with the Latinx community in Washington County, grades 3 through 12. A student in particular that started with our very first, like way back when we started. She started as a 3rd grader. And she is now starting her freshman year in college, pursuing aeronautical engineering. Yeah, really awesome, right? She's such a superstar, but she had a conversation with me this week. She was so frustrated because she's feeling, I will say, she's attending a college that is mostly white. It's a private university, and she's feeling very uncomfortable. She's feeling like she doesn't have support. She's feeling that imposter syndrome. She's feeling like this might not be for her, but she loves engineering. And her professor, she talked to her professor, and her professor actually mentioned that she should change her major and pursue a different career. So yeah, it was just, I mean, I don't know that I have an answer to what she should do, but it was just such an eye-opening thing for me to hear, this person who has overcome so many different things, financial barriers to get here. She's a 1st-generation student, and then she's told, maybe not for you. So I think that's probably a very common story that many can relate to.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Karina. Would anyone else like to jump in on this question? Yeah, David, go ahead.
I'd love to share a story that this is an anecdote from one of our recent evaluation studies we did. And in this study, we had our mentors interviewing the students and gathering data on what the impacts of the program were that were kind of outside of the technical side. It was, you know, how do they become better leaders? How did they create an identity for themselves as somebody who can solve problems and things? And we went into it expecting that we would have some really good results, because we know that our program emphasizes that. There's an emphasis on gracious professionalism and core values. And we expected good things, but you know, some of the stories were just so exciting to hear them come back. One of them was about a young woman in a very rural team who, one thing we heard over and over again is that their team is like their family. My team's like my family. I love my team. They're like my family. And in this case, this young woman felt comfortable coming out to her team before her family and asking them to use her new name and her new pronouns. And that was her confidence boost to then go and talk with her family. So, and we had heard kind of other anecdotes like that before about these kinds of safe spaces. So that was a really exciting one for us to hear, for sure. And I see it as this is an indicator of a team that's doing it right. They've created that safe space that we want to see all of our teams have, for sure.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, David. That's like such a wonderful story to hear. And I think that's a great positive note to show like how STEM can be so important for some of these young people in helping them with their identities and helping provide safe spaces. And I think that's what we're all trying to do too, is I hope always for stories like that, because that means that you're doing it right. So congratulations on that. That's so great. Would anyone else like to talk about experiences they have had in terms of challenges or wonderful stories like that in terms of marginalized groups within STEM?
I think it's really important to recognize the power of language. And one of the things that many people take for granted is the fact that you know what a registrar is. You know the difference between a quarter and a semester and a dean and a professor versus an instructor versus lab and recitation. There's a whole powerful set of language that is intrinsically woven into higher education. And if your mom and dad didn't have that experience and you show up, you may not know what's going on. And the whole idea of somebody not being able to pronounce your name and struggle with that and dismiss it as being not important enough to learn how to do it correctly, that is a microaggression that happens day after day after day on every single college campus out there. So when it comes to making sure that all of our students have the opportunity to engage in higher education, there's just a lot of language that needs to be learned on both sides. And the problem is that we are failing to understand the importance of a language when it comes to communicating, but we all feel the pain of language when it isn't used correctly.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Jackie. And I think that STEM in particular is really notorious for jargon of all kinds. And it's not just higher education, it's STEM in general, I would say. And that can be really daunting, especially if you don't have a guide. And so I think that, I think we'll get to this as the night goes on, but the importance of having mentors to help you navigate some of these things. I also loved what you said about, the effect of compounded microaggressions. I always say, like, it's sort of like death by 1,000 cuts, and women and girls get it for being women and girls, but then if you're part of a marginalized group, it's just exacerbated even more. And so I think that if we're talking about kind of the leaky pipeline, those 1,000 cuts cut all sorts of holes in that pipeline, and that's where we can lose women and girls along the way. And I think that's a place where we can, if we can provide that support and we can provide mentors and guides, as well as education about language. I think language is, I could talk about language all night, but like, I think language also is so important when we're talking about being inclusive, and and retaining people and not making people feel like they don't belong here, because I think the language we use is important, and it can be one of those 1,000 cuts for a young person from a marginalized community. So that's excellent. Thank you. And so I think let's move on a little.
Could I just add one challenge that we
Sarah, go ahead, please.
Sorry. So one of the challenges that we've faced is just building awareness of these types of programs and the resources that are out there for marginalized communities. I think events like this, where we can collaborate and just share what each group is doing and what's happening in Portland, not only with all of the participants that are here tonight, but with each other, so that we can engage our own communities and share our resources. I think there's so many amazing things that are going on in Portland in STEM and for support for our marginalized communities. But if the families or the girls or the women aren't hearing about it, then we're not going to get them. So that's been a big challenge for STEM Like a Girl, is how do we reach the families and just bring awareness to our programs so that they can then want to come to our programs, or we can bring our programs to them. So, these kind of collaborative things I think are really important for supporting those types of communities.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the strength of kind of this network, this collaborative network we've built here too, is that we each have our own networks that we can speak to, and being able to connect them, I think will help us be stronger and better in supporting our community. So thank you, that's really good. And so then with that, I think let's start talking kind of about, let's march down the pipeline a little bit, or this pathway, starting with kind of youth programs and ways that we can better support young girls and femmes that are interested in STEM. And so I'd like to, I think progressing through kind of like elementary, middle to high school might be really a nice progression. And so Sarah, let's start with you and talking about some elementary programs and maybe challenges that you've seen in that space.
Sure, yeah. So just STEM Like a Girl has been around for about 3 years now, not quite 3 years. And I really started it because I would help out in elementary schools. I have 2 boys that are in elementary schools, and I would help out doing science and engineering projects in their classrooms. And I was noticing that in the K-2 range, the girls were jumping in, same as the boys. They'd be raising their hands to answer questions and do the projects. And when I would go into the 4th and 5th grade classrooms, the girls were much more reserved. They didn't want to jump in as much, and they were kind of letting the boys take over. And we really aim to create a program that would kind of be that jumping off point to then capture those girls at an early age, and then hopefully kind of feed them in down that pipeline, down that pathway to all these other programs that work with older kids. And what we have found, as I kind of touched on in my introduction, was that role of the parental or adult caregiver, and how integral it is to involve them at this young age. Because like I said, these girls aren't going to go out buying their own STEM kits to do at home. They're not going to drive themselves to OMSI. They're not going to sign up for, ChickTech's high school program. So you need that parental buy-in. And we have just found that that's been really critical. And, as a parent myself, I know how tempting it is to kind of say like, okay, I want to send you off to this camp so I can have a couple hours by myself. But we've gotten such amazing feedback from our parents that say they've really enjoyed that uninterrupted bonding time with their daughters during our workshops. And, our survey results say that the parents are building confidence and are more likely to do STEM activities with their girls after they've been hands-on and engaged. So I think that's one thing that's, especially for this young age group, that is really critical, is involving the parents, and then, you know, getting the girls hands-on and doing stuff as quickly as possible, and really trying to relate it to, you know, real life experiences, real life, you know, ways to help. You know, we've found, especially with the young girls, if you were to say like, go build a robot, a lot of them, you know, or build a circuit, a lot of their faces just kind of go blank and they aren't really interested in that. But if that robot can serve as a, you know, helping hand, as a prosthetic, and you can talk to them about like how they can be helping our community, or, you know, they can make, you know, help the environment by their civil engineering project that they're working on, to engage them in that way has been a really important role for us at that point. So just a few ideas.
Yeah, and I guess I have a question based on what you said. I think it's amazing that you're having this caregiver involvement in your programs. That sounds like it would make such an impact. Is there ever any instances where there are kids that don't have caregivers that can come with them to programs? And is there anything that can be done about that?
We haven't experienced that at this point. We have arranged a lot of the caregivers that come are moms, which we love because, you know, more women in STEM, and if we can get the moms to do it too. But we have a lot of dads, we've had grandparents, we've had aunts. So we haven't had that issue, but I could see for some communities that could be a drawback, especially if they've got, you know, younger kids at home that need, you know, the parents home. So yeah, we don't require it to be a relative, but that is something that could be a drawback.
Yeah, I have a little bit to add to that as well. The folks that we target, the demographic that we target is high school age folks in ChickTech. However, that comes with a potential set of additional barriers. We want this programming to be open to high school students who may have kids of their own, high school students who don't have access to transportation, high school students who maybe are in charge of taking care of their younger siblings during the day when, you know, a parent or guardian is at work. So we try to think pretty hard about all these barriers that potential kids in our programs could be facing that would prevent them from even being in the room to get access to all these amazing benefits by being in the room. So some of the things that we've done at ChickTech, we offer free daycare for anyone who has kids as a high school student or potentially even younger siblings. We also offer transportation to all of our students. And we try to make sure that all the students have meals while they're there. So these are all barriers that, you know, could prevent someone from joining, but just being able to even say that you're offering these things when, you know, talking about programming, it can just cut down a lot of the stress, a lot of the even shame, a lot of the, you know, problems that might come up for a student even being involved.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Danny.
I'll share something. I'll share
go ahead.
something that's been working well for ELSO. Well, one thing that we do is we invite parents to be on our board. You know, having parents empowering them, because I think there's a veil that you have to be some rich professional with no practical day life to run anything. And we empower the parents to actually be on the board. Another thing we do is reach out and speak with the teachers. And a lot of times the referral for our programs, all those great benefits are there, but the teachers are the ones that are sending home the flyer during the year, or the rec pack, or the, you know, recreational summer type programming. And that way that ELSO is an option that they may not know about. And yes, Danny, like the same things, the transportation, the food, you know, those things are, and having like a pay scale, right? Not charging everyone the exact same price to participate. Those sorts of things, I think they've been really working well for ELSO. And even adapting after COVID, you know, we translated our program from in-person to virtual, and we were able to give out 500 kits, you know, to kids to make sure that they're doing science in the summer and preventing that summer learning loss. You know, so it's been really, some of that's really been working.
Very cool. Yeah, I think in thinking about these things that are really working in STEM, I think the next step in that is figuring out maybe who's being left out, and then trying to identify ways that we can support those that are being left out and bring them, include them into these programs. So that's cool. Dr. Wirtz, do you want to talk about middle school and pre-middle school? I
want to talk about middle school because it is in so many ways like the most awkward manifestation of all of us. I can just see my middle school self and oof, it's not a pretty sight. But when it comes to identification of girls in STEM, this is a pivotal moment. There is a very famous test called the Draw a Scientist test, also known as DAST. This was originally created by a social scientist named David Chambers and running in the late 60s to the late 70s. During that time, he asked 4,807 students of varying ages to draw a scientist. Of those 4,807, 28 drew females. That's 0.6%. Now, the times have changed. The DAST experiment has been run for many, many, many more years and currently has more than 20,000 registered responses from studies all across the globe. And now the number lies at roughly 28% of all of the participants draw a female scientist. So there are a bunch of controls that you can talk about drawing your own gender, et cetera. And there's been a lot of analysis of all of the data. But one of the most striking things to me is the fact that there is a pivotal change in young girls in middle school. When the children are in elementary school age, roughly 70% of them draw women as being a scientist. These are girls drawing scientists. 70% of them will draw a woman. By the time they reach high school age, that percentage has dropped to 25%. And now those same girls draw 75% men as scientists. This switch occurs during those pivotal middle school years when we're starting to develop a sense of gender identity, and our senses of selves and our potential selves are so fragile. And I think one of the major hurdles that we are facing when it comes to middle school engagement is that precipice of looking at the people around you and seeing yourself represented in success. So one of the things that we do in our Girls Engage Technology program is we have the girls themselves in middle school, our professional educator who has professional STEM experience, and then we pair them with a near peer teen mentor. So that combination of seeing success both in someone who's very close in age to you, and then seeing that success projected forward in a professional who has a career in the STEM disciplines, that magnifies their ability to see themselves as successful scientists and to envision others as being successful scientists. So I think the Draw a Scientist test is a real intriguing insight into our sense of identity and really does get to that pivotal middle school era. Now, one other thing that I will just close out on is the fact that in the most recent 20,000 iterations of the Draw a Scientist test, 79% of those drawings are of white scientists. So the racial equity issues that need to be surmounted are also huge. And all of this needs to be something that we're addressing during those pivotal middle school years.
Yeah, thank you for touching on that last point, Jackie. I think that that's kind of what I was thinking as well. And I think representation is so important. And I know for me, as a developing scientist, I had people that looked like me representing scientists in my life. And I think that helped me greatly along the way. But with a lack of women of color in STEM as professionals, how do we make sure that they are being represented, that girls of color feel like they're represented in STEM? Does anyone want to answer that? Anyone have an answer for that?
Well, I know one change I'd been hoping to see is an end to the tone deaf advising. I think that the dominant culture would tell us that only whoever is excelling at the top of the class, or whoever is the loudest, whoever always sits in the front, these are the only people that care. These are the only ones that may end up doing this work. But really, I think that when we think about the value of creativity, or the value of persistence, or the value of just keep showing up, right? Or you always come to office hours. Obviously you care. You know, finding ways to not discourage people based off of them not being in the top 10% of respondents every time, or not having parents that are overly pushy about the grades. So if no one's advocating for them, they'll do whatever. Just trying to end that, I think that's really going to make a difference.
Trouble with my mute button. Thank you so much, Dr. Richardson. I think that yeah, what you said is so important. It brings up that language again, right? Like the way that we're talking to trainees, students, young people in general about who they are and who they can be and what they should be, I think is important too. And yeah, this is all great conversation. Thank you so much. And yeah, next I want to move on to like high school stuff. David, can you speak to some high school programs?
Yeah, absolutely. And also want to echo a lot of what the other panelists have said. It's all so true. And for us in particular, we can really see that drop off that Jackie was talking about. We track our participation in students, and we can see that in the youngest programs, we're near gender equality, parity. But as we get up into high school, that does drop off. And so that's a lot of where our efforts are. Certainly we're encouraging young women to participate throughout. But a lot of our work recently has been on the high school programs. Couple areas. One is around the confidence building. I think Sarah was talking quite a bit about that, building the confidence. And that is a big part of it. We run a tournament that essentially is girls only, and in particular in the technical roles. Sometimes in our teams, what we'll see are gender disparities in the roles the students play, where the boys will be more likely to be hands-on with a robot, while the young women on the team are doing marketing, scouting, business side, and less technical work. So we're trying to push that. And along with that tournament that gets girls hands-on and focuses on that, we have also been pushing quite a bit to do a lot of recruiting around women as mentors. And near peer mentors are fantastic. So college students are great, high school girls mentoring middle school and younger girls, but professionals in the field who can take some time to work with the teams is a huge impact. A young woman actually one of the high school students up in Washington did a piece of sociology that I thought was unbelievable when she presented it. And she had surveyed all the teams in the Northwest and asked about the students, what roles they played and what kind of mentors they had, and how the mentors were integrated. And the teams that had, this is going to sound so obvious, but this is what we're pushing on. The teams that had women mentors in technical roles were 3 or 4 times more likely to have young women in those roles on the teams. So we're educating our mentors, we're recruiting mentors to try to encourage that. And that is true not just for women, we know that is true as well for people of color, that if we can bring in more people of color to act as mentors, act as judges and referees in these lead roles, that is a good way to diversify the group.
Yeah, thank you, David. I think that that's an excellent call to action for our community, right? Is serve as a mentor for someone who needs a mentor. Because I think, if you're thinking about what you can do out there in the community, those attending, this is something you can do. We always need mentors for young people. So please, if you're interested in getting involved, you can contact us.
And if I could add, I think that it's also a fantastic role where you can get involved in multiple organizations that are here tonight. So if you mentor one of the teams that we have based out of Centro Cultural, you can work with both of our organizations. And there's other examples of where that's true, I think.
Yeah, and that's a great segue, because I wanted to ask Elizabeth if, in terms of mentors from the perspective of the community and the population that you serve, how important is it to have mentors that speak the language of the student? Or can you speak to maybe also how we can connect with parents to help support students when they don't speak English as their first language?
Yeah, so the majority of our volunteers currently come from Intel. Luckily, Intel has a Latino network within their company, so a lot of the volunteers are Spanish speakers. It would be very hard if we didn't have dual language volunteers, particularly because where we're based is Cornelius, Oregon, which is a very migrant population. So a lot of people that are just migrating to the United States. And in a lot of our programs, we have students who have not studied English enough to be able to get by. And the other thing is, yeah, you're right. With our parents, a lot of our parents don't speak English or have very minimal understanding. So right now there's only 2 of us on the education department that speak Spanish. And it's a department of 3 people. So the third person has a lot of trouble communicating with the parents. And so it's a little bit of a shuffle sometimes. It's like, oh, I'm really busy. Can you call this person? And so we have to rely on our volunteers sometimes. We have to be like, hey, we need this to get out there. Can you help us since you speak Spanish? I think the other thing is that we're utilizing our volunteers not only because they speak Spanish, but their backgrounds in STEM. So we've noticed that a lot of our parents have very minimal idea of what STEM is. They're not really, a lot of them didn't even know it was an acronym. So that was really hard. We had to explain what the acronym was, what it stood for, and basically saying, hey, it's not one type of science, it's multiple types of science, right? So one of the things that we're doing currently is starting a STEM literacy program, teaching about how you see STEM in your everyday life, such as like when you're cooking, that's a form of chemistry. When you're baking, that's a form of science. Or if your dad's a mechanic or you have a mechanic in your life, that's some type of engineering. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that we are speaking not only the language in Spanish, but the language where it's not jargon, where we're not throwing these giant words at you and you completely glass over and have no idea what we're saying. I also want to speak from my own experience because I studied environmental science and we did a lot of chemistry and physics in it. But I could never talk to my mom about it. Like anything I said, I couldn't find the words to translate them. And if I did find the words to translate them, they didn't mean the same thing. So it was a very hard conversation. And I don't want our students to feel like that because they get so excited. They like, oh, I built this and I did that, and they want to share it. And it's very hard. It's very hard to translate something that you yourself are just learning in English. So we're trying. We're working on it.
Yeah, that is such an excellent, again, it comes down to language, and it's not just about language and English and science to English. It's science to English and science to Spanish. And I think that that's another great example too of where mentors and volunteers can be really useful as well. So thank you, Elizabeth. That's really great. And I'd like to open it up for any of the other panelists if they'd like to comment on anything that's been said so far about youth before we kind of move on. Anybody? Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm gonna move on. So I think we've highlighted some really great inflection points for like kind of what we can do as a community, and maybe realizing that language is really important, realizing that or recognizing where our programs are inclusive or not, and how to spread that sort of message that, you know, not all students are going to look the same. They're not coming from the same experience, and so meeting them where they are is a great way to bring them into STEM and keep them there. And so then in moving into talking about the barriers to retaining adult women, or like career age, I guess, women within STEM fields. And then beyond that, promoting them into leadership. I'd love to start that conversation too. Would anyone like to jump in on that one to start? I mean, I can start a little bit. I know from my personal experience that imposter syndrome is this huge thing. That imposter syndrome, imposter phenomenon are especially common in women in STEM, and even more so for women from marginalized communities. And so I think that that aspect of things makes everything so much harder. You don't feel like you belong there. You don't see yourself represented in, you know, the big wigs, or like famous scientists don't necessarily look like you. And so what makes you think that you can be a scientist, that sort of thing. And it becomes this negative self-talk that's kind of based on societal norms in a lot of ways about what a scientist should look like. And so I personally struggled with imposter syndrome a lot, especially in graduate school. Basically every woman I've ever talked to in STEM has a similar story about where they've felt like an imposter. And so that's a significant barrier, I think, especially early on as women are getting into their career. I think that imposter syndrome can sort of fade, and it comes back, but like it can be less present in your life as you have more experiences, and as you can be as you can excel at certain things and like see that you are successful. But that does take time, and I do think that sometimes early on in your career you need a mentor again to say like, no, you belong here, you need to stay here, like Dr. Richardson said, like just keep showing up, like you can do this, like this is hard, but you can do it. And so I think that that's kind of what I see for like early career.
Yeah, I can piggyback off that a bit. You know, a big thing that I think is really important to acknowledge for adults in tech, or adults with technical proficiency or wanting to get into tech, is that it's not just about learning the technical skills, right? So, you know, as much as possible, like with ChickTech's work, we try to think of adults as more holistic people rather than just workers. So, you know, just like Lily said, that includes making sure that folks feel like they can advocate for themselves to be promoted into leadership positions. That also means making space for self-care, both in the workplace and outside of it. That means making sure that working parents are able to balance their roles as a professional and as a mom or dad or parent. So that's another big thing to think of when we talk about the retention issue of women in STEM. It's a lot of those like death by 1,000 cuts kind of situations where, you know, 5 out of 6 of the needs that this woman has are not being met by the company that she's working for, and she's not able to balance her life in the way that she should be able to. So that's a big part of, you know, why it's so important to think of these people as holistic beings, not just, you know, worker bees. So yeah, that's another thing to consider with this demographic.
I can just add on to that a bit. And I think Dr. Richardson kind of talked about this a little bit in the beginning. You know, having a family, being a mother, heading a family, it's valuable for all cultures, but specifically in the Latinx culture, it's huge. Women's role is really to take care of the family, to have children. It's just really ingrained in our culture. So I think a lot of women may have a hard time when they pursue STEM careers that are very time consuming. You know, you may start in a STEM position, but you're not making very much money, but it would take a lot more to get to that next step where you would be, you know, financially stable and happy with where you are in that leadership role. So I think there's a lot of guilt that comes with that, not being able to be part of your family the way that you want to be culturally, and pursue your career as well.
Yeah, I mean, I personally felt that guilt. It sounds like Dr. Richardson also felt that guilt. I think that that's a common feeling for all women, just because being a mother seems like, just as a broad society, kind of like being a woman and being a mother are synonymous. And I think that having one of the issues in STEM, I feel, is that for a long time, and hopefully it's changing now, but I think that it was that women kind of had to choose one or the other. And I've encountered women, especially in academic science, that have said you kind of have to choose, and you're not going to be a good scientist if you're a mother, and you're not going to be a good mother if you're a scientist. Like, you have to choose, right? So yeah, exactly. I think that language again is signaling to women that, you know, they can't be both, and they do have to choose, and maybe they're not, you know, fit to be a scientist if that is the case. And I'd love to change that language a lot, because I think that I've seen so many successful both mother scientists, or scientist mothers, just like killing it. And so I think that is something that we need to just talk about more and normalize, and say, okay, you need to go home and take care of your kid, or your kid's sick. Like, yeah, your kid's you're going to be working, you care about this, so like you're going to be doing the work. I think a lot of people think that yeah, that you have to choose, and I want to tell women that they don't. So
I have kind of conflicting feelings about this, because on one hand, if you look at my resume, even I'm like, dang, that looks put together, and it looks like I know what I'm doing, and like I had a clear trajectory. And when you look at the external manifestations, it looks really cool, but it was nothing but chaos and self-doubt and imposter syndrome the entire way. So one thing that I really want to let people know is that I have a career. I've been successful in my career. I have a family. I have the most adorable kid. Oh my God, he's adorable. But it's hard, and every day it is hard. And I just want people to know that it is definitely the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And when I was, you know, first had a newborn baby and was still trying to get into those next ranks in academia, you know, I went to a lot of women scientists and, you know, tried to form my own clan. And that's really what got me through this, because advice from other people, I needed to find people who were living it in the moment. And that is one of the things about being a woman in STEM that is amazing, because if you choose so, there is an incredible community of women out there. And it's difficult to engage, because it's easier to think that you're just going to put your head down and you're going to do this science, you're going to get that paper, and everything is going to be okay, and you can sacrifice everything to make it happen. But by sacrificing everything, you're sacrificing an opportunity to meet and engage with the most fabulous, inspiring woman that you're ever going to see. And we all struggle, and you can share in that struggle, but that also means that when we triumph, you get to share in that triumph. I know people think that I am like the world's biggest extrovert. And yeah, it looks like I'm a ridiculous extrovert, but actually I'm an extroverted introvert. So after this meeting, I'm going to crawl in a hole and die. But one of those things is that it's hard to ask for help, and it's hard to say like, I need community. And it took me hitting absolute rock bottom for me to actually say, yeah, I need some help. And it was so painful and so hard. And every year I challenge myself and I write 5 emails in January, every January, to 5 women that I think are amazing. And I say, hi, my name is Jackie. I think you're doing amazing things and I'd just like to learn more about it. And that is how I have my coping mechanism to find a community and grow a community. So being a woman in STEM, it comes with challenges, but it comes with a really badass community.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jackie. I think that is an excellent thing to highlight. Again, call to action, be a part of the community to help support other women like you or people or mentor. I think that that's that wolf pack of women will fight for you, and they'll fight against you, against yourself, if that makes sense. So when you're engaging in negative self-talk and you're like, no, I can't do this, that pack of women is behind you being like, no, you got this, like, go do it. And I think that I've seen that magic happen in community spaces with women in science, that it just like, it makes me glow, and I get that warm tingly thing inside where it's like, this is the magic of women supporting each other, sharing their experiences and helping empower one another. And that has been so inspiring to see. And I think that's what we need more and more of. And it also takes that vulnerability, like you talked about, to say like, I need help, or I'm here to engage in this community because this is hard. And you just want to hear that other people think it's hard too. So that's great. Thank you so much.
I'm based out of Virginia. I know this is Oregon, but I'm based out of Virginia, so I'm going to be signing off for the night. But I did want to kind of share a little bit more before leaving, just kind of some solutions that I'm hearing that it seems like are happening in multiple places. I would challenge that, like for Elizabeth and your organization, I wrote a bio explicitly for parents. And so essentially, it was essentially for women. So it wasn't the pretty, I went all these places, I got all these internships and won all these awards. It was like, I was working 2 jobs and I was taking the bus, and I worked at Blockbuster while I was in college. I was a secretary before I went to NIH. Like, you know, say the things that you had to do, and it'll empower the families to know how to support the kids. I think that's really important, because there's this air that when people would meet me and I would say, I have a PhD in pharmacology and toxicology, they would say, oh my God, I wish I could have stayed in school, but such and such happened. It's like, ma'am, I didn't ask for all that. Like, you know, like, it's like, I'm not judging you. And so being in academia, it was as if I was more and more unapproachable, rather than, you know, to the ideals that Karina expressed, being more included in the family. I was more of an outsider. So I think one thing that's helped with that is writing your real bio and sharing that story, and not being afraid to talk about Jackie, like talk about the moments where you felt really alone, or the moments where you were doing too many things at one time. You know, not being afraid to talk about those other things. And then second and finally, one thing I'm hoping we can do is encourage institutions to stand in front of marginalized communities before, rather than putting the burden on the students and on the employees while they're there, and while they may have run into a situation and just not had the language. So essentially, bring in somebody to talk about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, or about different learning styles, or, you know, and not just, hey, unless someone's grabbing your bottom, everything's fine, because that's not the extent of what it means to be supported, you know, as a woman in STEM. You have to make sure that people know, like, these are the boundaries, and making statements like, if you're having kids, you're not working hard enough in the lab. You shouldn't have to experience that and reflect on it years later you should know in advance and throughout your program or throughout your tenure at a job, you know, that something wrong has been said to you. So, you know, like I know with ELSO, we have like a consulting side where we go into groups, and if a company wants to talk about how to make their job more friendly to women or more friendly to people of color, we actually have scientists and folks come in and talk about that work. And so just even if you're not like hiring for ELSO, it just in general, stand in front of protecting your women, stand in front of protecting your people of color so that people don't go through further harm by trying to push their careers. So that's what I hope to kind of communicate through this experience.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richardson. I love that you brought that up. And so please, if you have to take off, please do. We'll continue.
It's nice to see everyone though. Thanks for coming. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being involved. That was so great. Yeah, I think that she brought up some really great points. And I think that that's something as organizations we can work to do too in creating language. You know, I think that that's a big highlight of what's happened, what we've talked about tonight, and making sure the language that we use is inclusive, and that we're not perpetuating any of these societal stereotypes or gender norms that are damaging to empowering women in STEM, basically. Women, everybody, you know. I think that we just need to be a lot more cognizant of kind of what we're saying and how we're saying it. And we can start as organizations doing that. We can start as individuals, and then we can, you know, bring that into our organizations. I think that's important. So we do have some more time. So I would like to go into the questions from the audience, if we have any. Danny, were you collecting some questions for us to
yes,
talk about?
Let me pull up the Q&A section. I can find it.
And thank you for your questions. I think that we had some really good questions in the question and answer box.
You've been great. Let me find my Q&A window. I'm sorry, folks. 1 second. There. Okay, great. So we had a question come in around recruitment of folks in tech. So realizing the lack of BIPOC and Women-X in information technology, our efforts in DEI tend to be of, by, and for. We're particularly interested in any guidance you can offer when it comes to hiring and generally offering an IT position in a way that doesn't inadvertently dissuade or exclude. Does anyone have any insight into what organizations and companies can do to make sure that they're reaching the right people and making sure that opportunity is in those marginalized communities?
You know, I think one thing that people could do is, you know, you have now this network of folks who are working with marginalized communities in the area. Just as simple as sending out an email to us, letting us know that you're hiring. And we can share that along with our network. And I think that's just a very easy way to get it out to maybe people that you wouldn't normally be in contact with.
Yeah, and I would say another thing would be examine the language that you're using. Again, we've highlighted that multiple times. How much jargon do you have in your posting that might dissuade or exclude someone? I think looking at that critically is important, because even if you're sending it out to these different communities, if you're using all sorts of jargon, people might feel like they're, you know, not qualified to even apply. So
I would like to recommend the tool for organizational self-assessment, and this comes from the Coalition of Communities of Color and All Hands Raised in Portland State University. And what it is a toolkit for organizations to grow in their cultural competence. And part of that includes best hiring practices and interviewing practices. So I found that this was a really useful tool. It's very concise. It gives you very practical tips about how to put together a job description and a hiring process process that is going to be accessible and equitable.
That's great. Thanks, Jackie. And that's a good point, or a good time to bring up that we will be sending out a lot of these resources in a follow-up email to everyone who registered. So maybe Jackie, you can offer that to give us that link, and we can include that too.
And then I'll add, if it is within your sphere of influence, really looking at the policies too that are at your organization, your HR policies. So we've looked at our PTO policy. Can we make it more flexible? We've added a child care flex spending account, just whatever you can do. As we heard, there's a lot of, I think, real and perceived choices that are out there, and they don't have to be a either or choice. I think if you can create policies that show there are other choices, then that helps as well.
Awesome. Thanks all of you for answering that. We have another question here. Have you ever gotten the opposite of discrimination because of your gender? Anyone want to speak on that?
Well, I think I responded that question.
Yes.
I didn't participate in others, but the opposite of discrimination is feeling empowered and by others, by telling me, hey, I know you can do this. I know you are able to give, like, and even in a situation where I was feeling that I was not gonna able to do it, and yes, I think it was, as a woman, I was putting myself into the place I was not gonna able to do it, and I received empowerment for the opposite sex, like it was all men who decided to put me there, to empower me, and other women were there. And I think that feeling is what I like to pass to my students, that empowerment, that feeling of you can do it, why not? And it's not only gender, it's race. I work with mostly Latinos, and I remember the only time I saw my elementary students seeing the experience of science, we thought the entire year that there was a group always on the other room of boys, and just boys. So I thought it was something different. I never thought it was a science class. And my class is arts, and so I have mostly girls, and I have like 2 or 3 boys, and we were invited to their last class, their last exhibition for science, and I saw it was only boys, and girls started to ask, hey, why don't you do that? Like, well, because I'm an art teacher, but that gave me the idea of why we don't, exchange ideas, why we don't, contribute, because it's so paired. You can do art and you can do science. And even with that conversation I had with Amanda, one of your members, is like, we can do this. We can bring science to art. We can bring that to existing programs. That's why I'm here, because I started that conversation earlier to say, hey, how can we integrate the science with the arts? Because one thing that my students knew all about science and all about mixing was to do this glitter thing in their fingers. I don't know what it's called. So everybody wanted to do that as experiment of science. I said, that's not it. You need to explore more, and I need to explore more to bring to the kids. And I think kids are open and willing to experiment what's going on with the science and what's going on with the art, and bring to there are so many exercises that I can think of that we should do that, but well, I'm out of the question. Yes, it feels empowering, and we should do it. We should empower the opposite, and we should empower always with the with the power of yes. Sorry, guys.
No, that's great.
Yeah, I just got excited.
I love that. And I think that that's such an important message that we hadn't touched on really yet, was like how important it is to empower people, right? To try new things and to, you know, disregard what people think, or what the definition of a scientist says, or what people think what science is. And it's like, science can be art. What do you do when you like mix two colors together? You're experimenting. What do you get, right? So I think that there's something else about like correcting almost the definition of what a scientist is, and making it a lot more inclusive and broad. And again, I'll say that I think that every human is a scientist. Humans are naturally scientists. I mean, if you watch a kid learning how to do anything, like a toddler, they are scientists, and they tend to lose that identity once they kind of realize what a scientist should be. And I think we need to empower all people to continue to have that identity as we go along. So thank you so much, Jessica. That was great.
Cool. We have one more question here, but it's about something that I think we would love to kind of go towards the end of this panel on, which is how can someone get involved with the fight towards equity in tech and in science? You know, of course, donations are always something that every nonprofit out there is looking for. But if you're not able to financially donate, what kinds of things can folks do to support the community of women in STEM, or organizations working to empower women in STEM?
I think, as mentioned before, adult mentors for youth programming are huge. If you yourself are a person in a STEM career and you have the time, we love guest presenters in our programs just to talk about your experiences. We want our youth to picture themselves in your shoes and, you know, hear the good, the bad, everything that took to get there. I think that's huge for them. So that's absolutely something you could do.
I mean, one of the things that we're always looking for is space to host our workshops. So if you work for a company that has a large conference room or, a building that we could come in and host one of our workshops, that's always something that we're looking for. Or as an organization, collecting supplies that we can use, and I'm sure, some of the other organizations could use that too. And then the last thing that I would say is, same as, mentors and volunteers, getting a group from your work or your community friends together to volunteer as a group is something that we're always looking for too. So there's lots of ways that are, non-monetary to get involved in organizations and support them from different levels.
And I think that just being a cheerleader for anybody who has any interest in STEM, just making sure that they're aware of possibilities, and that if they do something really, really awesome and they make a Rube Goldberg machine, that you're like, that is super cool. And just encouraging people with enthusiasm and genuine engagement. And that goes a long way. And if a parent does that with their child, there's a higher likelihood that I'll get to see them in one of my classes or camps. But it starts with just the family and friends and the local community just cheerleading everybody on, because if you have a crazy question and you want to answer it, go for it. Don't wait for anything. Just go for it. And I will be here mentally rooting for you all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think, I mean, every single individual can do something if they're thinking about these things in any of the interactions that they're having. So you can make a huge impact on a young person in your life just by what Jackie said. So I think it doesn't have to be a huge contribution. You don't have to, you know, donate a ton of money or donate a ton of time. But if you take a minute to talk to a kid about science, that can be huge. So thank you for saying that, Jackie. That's important.
Awesome. Yeah, there's so many ways to either get involved directly with any of the orgs here. We're always looking for volunteers, you know, supplies for programming. So there's so many ways to help. And of course, I wouldn't be a nonprofit marketing person if I didn't say, you know, donations are always super great too. Even a couple of dollars helps folks out. Across all the orgs represented here tonight, we have a combined goal for year-end donations of $178,000. And any, you know, if you're able to donate and you would like to, all of the organizations are listed on the website where you registered, and you can head over there and check out ways to get involved, whether that's by donations or volunteering your time. Anything will always be very much appreciated and supported. The last thing we would like to do before we close out the evening is announce some raffle winners. So thank you so much, first of all, to all of our panelists today. You all were amazing. And also thank you to folks who volunteered to put together some of these prize packs. So the folks up here on the screen, we will be reaching out to you for these various prize packs to coordinate any apparel sizing and pickup options. We've got Women in STEM PDX limited edition t-shirt, which is awesome. Caitlin Chun, you're the winner of that, congratulations. We've got a ChickTech swag bag, which includes a t-shirt, a sticker, and a pin. Sue, you're the winner of that one. We'll be reaching out to you. And then lastly, we have a Camp ELSO swag bag, which includes a water bottle, a t-shirt, and a mask. And that goes to Shivali. So we will be reaching out to everyone there to coordinate some of those. And yeah, with that, I believe we are just about ready to close out. So anyone want any last remarks for any of the ways to give back?
I just want to thank all the panelists for being here and being a part of this conversation and the work that we're doing every single day. I applaud you for your time and your effort and your dedication to this work. And it's so inspiring for me to speak with other people that are just as dedicated in doing this stuff. So thanks for participating in the conversation. As I mentioned before, we'll be sending out a lot of these resources and things in follow-up emails. You can, and this recording will also be included in that. So you'll have it as a reference for later. And I look forward to working with all of you and those of you that are in the community as well. Please reach out to us and get involved. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. We will be signing off now and hope everyone has a great end to their week. Thanks, everyone.